Hey everybody, Doug here from 2 Plus Stuff. How are you all doing? I am here after work, just getting settled in. Let me turn some music on for us. And adjust the audio so it doesn't blow your eardrums out. So now we got some nice chill beats while we work tonight. So, if you don't know what I'm talking about today, basically, Sam Pearson, who is my man crush over at GW, my favorite person in terms of rules design, that kind of stuff. He put out a cool little thing on Games Workshop's page today, on the community page, about rules for you to play Age of Sigmar solo. And it kind of captivated me. It's kind of an interesting thing. I'm going to pull it up. I have a whole bunch of tabs and stuff like ready to roll. And I will pull it up now. We'll go over here. Let me just make sure that transfer went all right. Yep, we're good. So this is what he put up. It's called Quest to Slay the Troggoth King, and it was pitched as AOS one player, and it's an interesting thing because it's kind of in this weird middle space between Warcry and AOS. In fact, right here, getting started at a flat surface, roughly 30 by 22, a Warcry board is perfect. It really, really is. And so what this is rules for you to make an Age of Sigmar army with a hero and 2 units. There's a few qualifications for that. You play in a 3-round campaign against the Troggoth King, presumably. And you go like, you basically play one battle, go to the next one, go to the next one, that kind of stuff. Okay. So that makes pretty sense. They have a little chart for like, here's how you do injuries, or not injuries, but casualties. And then it comes up with this thing that's called Troggoth Intellects, where it basically has a sequence, like a thing that you roll on to determine what the enemy units are doing, right? And that's how it does like the AI logic, right? And so they break it down to, if a troll, when you choose to activate it, is in combat, you roll a d6 and apply those results. If it's close, meaning it's outside 3, but less than 12, this is the second chart, and then if it's far, meaning it's nowhere near an enemy, it does this other thing. So you're always rolling a die to determine what they do, and the results of these are down below. So for example, if you roll a 1 on any of them, dumbstruck, they just stand there and look stupid, because that's a very troll thing. Beyond that, it kind of mixes it up. Now, what's interesting is that like it really is rules-wise suited to where, I would have my turn as normal, and then I would do the Troggoth turn, with these rules. And I got to thinking about it. Rule structure-wise, it's very nice with Age of Sigmar because there's one turn and the other, so you're just what you're really doing is writing programming language for the trolls to act on their own in their own turn. And so what I wanted to do was find a way to turn this into a Warcry thing. Now, there are a lot of big differences. Having alternating activations is a big departure from what this rule set was intended to do. Right? This is, always like, because it's nice and cleanly separated by turns, they're able to lump all of the hero phase abilities and that kind of stuff into their activation phase. And they basically just rewrote all that. So what we're going to do is kind of get in there, make a mess, and try to translate this into Warcry. Now I'm doing this out loud because, one, I had nothing else to talk about today, and I wasn't really feeling the video game. And also, I really want to do another Warcry battle report. That was a weird ism with my tongue there. So I want to do a Warcry battle report this weekend with whatever we come up with. Good or bad, I can at least give a review of it. So that's the plan. So here's what I got. Basically, I literally copied and pasted this entire thing, the rules, which I should mention there are 3 specific scenarios for here at the bottom. So that is important to know. I'm not going to use these or modify these. So basically, with the system that Sam came up with, it's a very specific board size, and he's trying to tell a specific story, right? Do you have, like 6 Troggoth models, maybe? You can play this. We're going to throw that out the window. We're also going to throw out all of the stuff about how you create your opponent's team, meaning they have like have a Trog boss, and then 2 to 3, if you want hard mode, units of Trogs, depending on what kind of Trogs you want, Fellwater or Rock, whatever. We're going to throw it out the window because we know we want to play an opposing warband. Doesn't have to be a legal warband. Like, in my mind, I envision my legal warband going into a fight against a whole bunch of like squigs or something like that, where it's not necessarily a legal warband, but it just sounds cool. So yeah, so there's a lot we're going to cut, but I went ahead and did that ahead of time. And so here is my Google Doc equivalent, where basically, like I said, I just literally copy and pasted all the stuff he did, because Sam and his team, I should say, but Sam's the ones whose name's on it, but the team did a fantastic job. And so I'm going to walk through the ideas that I have with you, right? And then what I'd love to do is just crowdsource this, okay? So let me make sure everything's working. Yep, still got some tunes going. All right. Let me get my headphones out because they're kind of bugging me. So first things first. Turn this up just a smidge, get myself all set up. I'm assuming everyone can see and hear me okay. I probably should have started with that. There we go, now I can see the chat. Let's see. I'm just reading here. Okay, we're good to go. So, getting started. I'm basically going to assume that you as a player have at least the Warcry core book, and I don't think it's crazy to assume that you have the Tome of Champions. Here we go. Got all my books right here, and now we can reference stuff. So here's the thing. I feel like it makes sense to base everything off of the core book, because that's the thing that most people who are, going to be doing this already have. But the Tome of Champions offers something that I think is super cool, which is the Trial of Champions or something like that, where it's the hard mode, right? You get injuries and that kind of stuff. So I'm not like super set on using the Tome of Champions. That might be an optional thing, but definitely the core rules, we're going to lean heavily into those. So getting started, to play through the campaign, you'll need the following, and I'm going to reword a bunch of this. Like I said, very rough draft. But you're going to build your 1K list just like you would if you were playing a normal game of Warcry. Now, if you know Warcry, you don't operate in lists. You operate in rosters. You have a big roster. It can have as many models with as many points cost on them as you want. The only real rule is you only have one leader. And you then, when you go to a battle, you pick the models that you want. Meaning you can have some guys sit on the bench for a round, whatever. All of that I want involved. So, yes, you're going to build your roster. I think it'd be cool to use a Tome of Champions because they have modifications to how you can build your roster. But, so we're going to build your roster as normal. From that roster, you're going to make a 1K Warcry warband. And the enemy warband, to start off, is also going to be 1K. However, for narrative missions, that kind of stuff, I do suggest you have it be lopsided. Meaning, because your opponent in this case is the AI, it's not going to make clever decisions necessarily. It's all kind of programmed, which you could game if you want. Having them have more points than you, I think, would definitely help in terms of having it be a really close match. So I definitely want to leave that open. Like, even if it's just 1200 versus 1K, that could be a big difference, just having some extra bodies for your opponent to move around. So consider that. That's one that I think is going to need playtesting, because I'm not positive that 1K versus 1K, when you have the intelligence of a person and the other one's just doing a preset made of commands, is going to really translate. So we'll come back to that. So for right now, starting the baseline, 1K, we'll adjust later. Pick your hunting party, which is what they call it in the original thing. This literally just means build your 1K list from your roster. Now, here's where we're going to start cutting some fat, okay? Playing the campaign. I do not want to have this be a 3-mission campaign. Ideally, the only thing I really want to lift from the stuff that the community article put out is the commands for your AI, right? Meaning, I don't really care about the campaign, you should be able to do all of the Warcry campaigns because there's so many of them, and then just play this as a mission, right? Or use this to fill in the gap of having an opponent, but you play missions and that kind of stuff from the core book. That's the idea. It's kind of what I'm leaning towards. And I feel like the play the campaign thing really makes more sense in a setup where, you know, you're doing AOS, but it's not really AOS. So yeah, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to delete some of this then, because we're cutting that fat out. I'm reading through here. Because this is... oh my god, we just moved everything. That's okay. It's the only problem. Only reason I don't really care for Google Docs. Now, of course, after all of this, I'm going to go back through and clean this up and make it very presentable, nice and pretty. I hope to make it kind of like this. That same cool, nice, crisp background and stuff. But right now, we're just working with the rules. So, if you are doing a campaign in, you know, we'll call it AI mode, right? Playing the computer. You're going to pick your hunting party. After the first and second, we can get rid of that. After each battle. Why is caps lock on? I was playing Fallout 76 and I threw a grenade, which is my caps lock button. After each battle, you must perform these 2 actions. Determine injuries. And now for me, you can use the Tome of Champions, which is my preferred way to play, to be perfectly honest with you. So to kind of give a brief recap for folks who are here or just tuning in, you're picking a 1K Warcry Warband. My god, there's a lot of W's there. And your opponent has 1K. You're playing a campaign mission from here, or playing one of the campaigns with the regularly generated missions like you normally would. And after each battle, you must perform these 2 actions. And this is what I like. So you got to determine the injuries, okay, which I love the Tome of Champions thing where you get people who have like snapped legs and that kind of stuff. And then the second one is roll on the events table. Now this is not necessary, to be honest with you. I just think it's kind of cool. The events table in the one that Sam Pearson put forward is just to give you something to happen, more dynamicism, more dynamic effects, and changes your warband a bit from game to game. So we'll go over to the nice clean one that they put together. I'm just going to call it Sam's, but I understand that there's a whole team of awesome people behind this. Here we go. So the events that he had were on a 1. So this is post game, right? Everyone's gotten their injury rolls, and you know who's alive and who's not. Deadly Rock Slide. Pick 1 unit from your army. Immediately remove D3 models from the unit as casualties. Again, in his version, you can have a unit of 20 dudes as long as they have a 6-up save. So there's a lot of bodies there, potentially. I translated that into Warcry for pick 1 uninjured unit in your warband. They immediately roll on the injury table as if they were injured in the last battle. Right, so in his version, he's kind of putting a little bit of a hindrance on what is possibly a big unit. And for me, I translated that into, since you have such precious few fighters, I'm not going to do a D3, because that's some cases half your warband if you're playing brutes. I don't want to do that. So just pick 1 guy who wasn't injured, and hey, they're fine. They get take an injury roll. I think that's pretty fair. And all of this, I'm looking for responses to. Again, we're talking game design, which is something I've never done this channel before. If you have a better idea, be clear about exactly what you're suggesting, so because there's like a 40-second delay between when you say something and I see it. So be clear so I can pick it up. The next one is Torrential Downpour. Subtract 1 from the bravery characteristic of units in your army until the end of the next battle. In addition, until the end of the next battle, units in your army cannot run. Which, like, I'm not going to lie to you, that sounds miserable. The fact that it's on a 32 by 22 or whatever helps, but I don't like any rules in Age of Sigmar or 40k or anything that says you can't run. It is just, it's just not fun. Omniphage, hey Doug, couldn't you have them start wounded? That is an awesome point. So in Deadly Rockslide, instead of starting on the injury roll, you could have them already be down health when the game starts. That is completely... That's a good option. That's a good option. I'm not sure which one I like more. That's one I'm going to play test. So, let me write these down. Weird. It's almost like I wasn't prepared for any of this. Okay. D3 dudes take D6. Oh man, but D6 is so brutal depending on what kind of warband you run. I mean, that could be savage. Because here's the thing: is like this event table is in addition to already existing injury things, so I don't want it to be like too punishing. But all this stuff will require playtesting, so let's do that. Deadly Rockslide. I'm just writing this down. Suffer wounds. 2 game wounded. The Zombie Man. So what exactly is going on? Sam Pearson over at Games Workshop and his team put together a rule set for playing Age of Sigmar solo, like a one-player mode, and we are collectively, as a groupthink, modifying that to make it for Warcry, so that I'm going to use these rules this weekend when I record a battle report. That's what's going on. So that's Deadly Rockslide. Again, so Torrential Downpour we covered. Subtract 1 from Bravery, and you can't run. For me, the way I translated that is subtract 1 from the movement characteristics of units in your warband until the end of the next battle. So again, they both cover both the full longevity of the battle. I just don't like not running. Like, I feel like you should always be able to move towards something. Downpour exists as a twist, I think. Yeah, these are already existing twists, and they might all be twist cards, but there's something that I think is kind of cool. Let's see. So that was my thought, was just subtract 1 from the movement, which still does hurt some factions more than others. Because like I think about Ironjaws, they're already starving for movement, but it does allow them to make the move action, which, you know, they can still move. That one I'm kind of iffy on. If someone has a better idea for Torrential Downpour, let me know. I certainly would never stack this with a twist card that does anything similar about movement. That's something I think I would draw the line at. Because, you know, if you go down too far, it's just not fun. Lost in the Woods. They wrote, for the AOS version, you don't gain a command point in the first battle round of the next battle. Jack says he'll believe a 2+ tough battle report when he sees it. Well, you're bringing the models, dude. I need your squigs for what I got planned. So Lost in the Woods, you don't gain a command point. Well, obviously, there's no command points in this one. And so the way I translated that, what I'm trying to do is make it seem like your leader has gotten everybody lost. So the way that I translated that was your leader cannot use or benefit from abilities until the end of the next battle. So it's your leader got him lost, he's dumbfounded, but everybody else still functions. They're just all kind of grumbling at him, not taking orders from him, because they're like, this guy doesn't know where he's going. That's my thought. Omniphage is a random die, a wild die. Yes, I'm sorry. I lost the nomenclature in my brain. I was at work when I came up with all this on my lunch break. So yeah, that was my thought. It was just having, you know, something where the leader doesn't contribute in the same way, but he still does. I mean, your leader is still usually a powerhouse, right? I think about my, what do they call Untamed Beasts? You know, even if he couldn't use abilities, that guy's still a baller. So, yeah, that was my thought. Next one is All is Silent. It was just a carbon copy. There's just no effect. All is Silent, no effect. Omniphage says, ouch, that kicks orcs in the nards. all of these things, everything in the game, I feel like kicks Ironjawz in the nards because it's not that they're like the weakest, it's just that they're so hyper focused that if you touch anything about movement or abilities or strengths, it hurts them in ways I don't think it hurts other factions. So I don't know. Next one is enemy spotted. Okay, so the AOS version is you gain 1 additional command point at the start of the next battle. Now, we obviously don't have command points. So let me put this in here. I meant to say wild, not random. But this is you gain 1 additional wild die at the start of your next battle, which of course you can bank for any time you want it. So I thought that's probably the easiest translation there is, right? A command point, a wild die, so you can use abilities. Awesome. If anyone has a better idea, hey, Kenji's in the chat. Kenji's been a while. How you doing? So, and then the last one is Uranus Wellspring. You find a source of healing water. For them, it allows you to put models back into a unit that have lost some. And so for me, I pick D3 fighters in your warband. They immediately heal from all injuries. So if you are playing the Tome of Champions method, injuries can carry on. You can have lasting injuries. So like if your guy breaks a leg, at the end of every game you roll to see, does he recover from it yet? If not, he can theoretically have a broken leg the entire campaign if he breaks it in the first round. So this would just be an instant heal up. And I thought that was a pretty good equivalent because it's the same concept of taking, kind of reversing some of the damage you've done game to game. So yeah, that was my thought. So I'm going to pause here because we kind of ingested a lot of information in the first 5 minutes. What do people think about the basic premise of what I'm doing? As far as, converting things, we have more to go. The next big chunk is talking about how you get the opponent to do an AI type thing. Ironjawz movement isn't too bad, but you can stack Wah and Zippy Zip. That's a great point. Yeah, you will have to get creative. Now, is Wah... I don't have... Well, maybe I do. I should. Say, I have all the fighter cards here in the back. Is it just the leader who can use Wah? Or a charge, triple Wah? Yes, it is. Okay. Brute boss. Yep. Okay. So that kind of sucks. I'm not going to lie to you. Yeah, they can all use a wall. Okay. So that is a big one. It is a big one if you roll that specific Lost in the Woods one. Let's see. Omniface, so happy it's a long weekend. Work's been busy. Oh yeah. Yep. Cool. Well, if everyone's on board, I'm going to keep moving along. So far, one possible change that Omniphage suggested was having Deadly Rock Slide. Instead of picking a dude who's uninjured and making him roll on the injury chart, it is pick D3 dudes and have them start the next battle already injured in some capacity. We can debate on how many wounds to apply, but I like it. I like both those ideas. You can use it twice per round if you're lucky, then wait and use it again in the next activation. That is true. Ooh, that's sneaky. I like that. I like that. Okay, so I'm gonna break this off as part of the core rules thing. Again, if you are doing this in the future, you do not have to do the events thing. The events thing is totally separate from twists in games, which I think they're kind of based on loosely. So it might be something you just skip. That's fine. Let's see. Now we're moving into what do they call this? Troggoth. Oh, Troggoth intellects was their term. And it's how they articulate the AI, basically. Great Book of Grudges, I'm kind of lost, but then again, I'm very new to AOS, so enjoying learning from this. Okay, sorry, Great Book of Grudges. We're not really talking about AOS. We're talking about Warcry, which is set in the same universe, but is not the same game. And we're translating a AOS rule set into Warcry. So we can certainly talk about AOS and stuff, because this is actually a great system that they made It's just hyper specific in this example, but it does work to AOS. So we'll talk about that at the end. So for sure, just buckle in there with me. I'm crowdsourcing ideas because I'm not the smartest man in the room, believe it or not. So here we are. This is how they govern the AI. And so how it works in the AOS version, because it's, I go, you go. Or not I go, it's turn-based, right? I do all of my things, and you do all of your things, and we kind of high-five in the middle for combat. So let's see. We have battle rounds. Instead of both players rolling off, you just on a 1 through 3, the Trog army on a 4-up, you get it. Oh, that's what you mean because you translated. Okay, cool. As long as you keep, I'm not confusing you. So they break down into the action phase, the combat phase, and the battle shock phase. So the action phase is where they do pretty much everything. They've lumped the hero, movement, and shooting and charging phases all into one thing called the action phase. And they just have what's called a behavior table, which is to say, you check and see where you are in relation to the nearest enemy unit. If you're in combat, if you're out of combat within 12 inches, or if you're more than 12 inches away, and you roll to see what they do. Now the problem, it's not really a problem. The flavorful thing that they did, because everything is Troggoth themed, and they are notoriously stupid, is that if you roll a 1, no matter where you are in relation to an enemy, you do nothing. They're just too dumb, they don't understand what they should be doing. In Warcry, where there's every activation matters, I don't like the idea of a fighter in your opponent's army just not doing anything. It's kind of interesting, and so I was talking about that with a good friend of mine. We're talking about kind of going back and forth with different ideas. So I'm just going to go through all of them, and then we're gonna review how I think we can improve Dumbstruck, which is the one where you do nothing. The other option, I'll go through these depending on where you are in combat. So if you're far away, on a 1, you're too dumb and you do nothing. On a 2 and 3, you do what's called hold. And they're very specific to Troggoth units, so I did a lot of cutting on these. But basically, if you are within range, you use your regeneration ability, because you're a troll. If you are within range, you chuck the rock, or you barf, depending on if you're a Fellwater Troggoth or a Rock Gut Troggoth, and that's it. You basically stand there, and you heal, and you shoot. That's what hold means. Then there is advance, which is literally what it sounds like. You just move as close to the nearest enemy as you can, right? This unit makes a normal move. Each model from this unit must finish the move as close as possible to the closest enemy unit. And again, it says make a normal move. You're not necessarily running. And then you get to move and shoot. That's what advance means. So if you are outside 12, you're either doing nothing, you're shooting, or you're moving and shooting. There are some AI rules in the Wrath of the Everchosen as well, I think. Are there? I don't know about that. If you are close, meaning you are out of 3, within 12, the hold's the same. Just stand there and shoot. And then you also have charge. And charge is you use your regeneration ability, you make a normal move, and then you attempt to make a charge. Like you get to move and then charge. And that's how they get around, like there's no move and shoot. You get to just do that, basically. And then it gives you some rules for like, hey, you have to end as close as possible as you can. And that's it for between 3 and 12. And the last one is if you're already in 3 inches, you get to shoot. Well, let's see. We'll do it also. Dumbstruck is you do nothing. Spooked means you fall back out of combat, which is really lame. 3, 4, and 5 are all hold, meaning you're in combat, but you can still shoot whoever you're engaged with, so you just do a shooting attack. And then there is Rampage, which is basically you do combat in the action phase. Okay, you get to do a free attack. Now, after all those things, that's all the AI for moving you, right, across the board. Generally speaking, for most of these, hold means you don't move and you stand there and shoot. Advance and charge allow you to move. And that's basically it. So, there's also no rules about how you choose which Troggoth to go. It's just you as a player being like, and I guess we'll go with this guy next, and we'll roll to see what he does. And then after all of that is done, you go to the combat phase as normal. Okay, so that's how that's going to work. Again, if you have Rampage, you got to do an attack, and then you go into the combat phase where you do another attack. That's why it's so cool. For Hold, if you were in combat, you get to shoot and then punch people, charge, And so, because they've made all of the movement actions in the action phase, and then all of the combat in the normal combat phase, which is where it catches back up to you as a player who is doing all the separate phases of the game in AOS, that's how they balanced it out. And then there's a little notes for basically if you take a Troggoth unit out of coherency, they don't just run away. You just have to move them so they're back in. That kind of little rulesy stuff to get things cleared up. And then Battle Shock phase, Trogs don't run away no matter what. And that's it. And then it goes into the mission. So, how do we translate this into Warcry? Right off the bat, I always want units to be able to move, because movement is such an important part of you want the game state to constantly be changing. So that when it comes back to your turn, you actually have hard decisions to make. These rules are copied from Wrath of the Everchosen. I don't remember that in Wrath of the Everchosen. Mine is all packed away, but I will check it out. Oh, Wandering Endless Spells and Monsters. That's what it was. Interesting. Okay. So, let's see here. What did I do? So for Dumbstruck, I don't like it. I don't like the idea of just nothing happening. So I'm going to go... we're going to define the actions, and then we're going to talk about how they work. So this unit does nothing. In addition, it is not picked to fight in the combat phase turn. That's what that's what my copy and paste was. I'd like to do it where basically, one second, my neighbor's dogs are going ballistic here. I'd love to do it where Dumbstruck, maybe it doesn't physically move you, but you can still act. So maybe you don't move, but your toughness goes up because you're defending and getting ready for a blow. Right, and so this way now the game's... let me show my window. I live right next to the little dog park area, and some of the pet owners near me are just terrible. So the way that I did things, Omniphage, you nailed it. Where when you're choosing which enemy to activate, it's whatever is closest to any of your models that has not activated yet. So we'll talk about in a second how that goes. But Omniphage, you're exactly right. That's exactly what I did. Henry, you could have it Dumbstruck be the wait action, and I get that. But what I would say is what are they waiting for? Because they don't necessarily use abilities. And this is the thing where it's how complex do you want the AI to be? So for example, in the AOS version, there's no command abilities. Or there's for your opponent, there's no Troggoth command abilities, that kind of thing. In the Warcry version, how would I write out rules that tell the AI what to do with an action? The actual abilities card thing. So I've kind of largely dumped that. I as a player can use abilities, but my opponent can't. And that's why I started off this whole thing by saying I do encourage asymmetrical games, like my 1K list versus a 1200 point opponent, because to kind of weigh that a bit. So I kind of have to back off of abilities just a smidge. But let's see, with Dumbstruck, I wouldn't mind it if it was, prepare for battle. We'll change the name to that, where all of a sudden now your dude is, he puts himself on guard basically. We could have it be an action where, he gets an extra toughness in case he does get attacked or charged or anything like that. And I don't know. So y'all throw some ideas. For Dumbstruck, are you familiar with disadvantaged in D&D? Nope. I do not know. Reroll successful rolls. Maybe change Dumbstruck to can't be affected by beneficial abilities, but it's the enemy AI, so that'd be kind of tough to do anyway. Or activate last. See, I don't mind that. The activate last thing is not bad. Maybe roll to see if they go towards an objective. See, the thing with the objectives, though, is that not every Warcry mission has objectives, like specific points. Off topic, what was that piano piece? I don't know. It's from a Google playlist. That was Snowfall by Scott Buckley. So yeah, I'm going to put a pin in that. So Dumbstruck is one. I want to move on just a little bit. You could have it that if the AI team has abilities available, they use it on a 4+. But that's still... So here's the problem with the AI thing is that, like, your rule is a great one, right? Just if they have a thing they can use on a 4-up, they use it. The question is, you want it to do whatever it's going to do in a smart way that makes sense. So, if someone rolls that 4-up and they use the ability, if you're trying to like recreate a smart opponent, they would have maybe used it on a different model or a different place or something like that. I don't know. I'm just... Let's get through the basic stuff before we worry about abilities, because that is a whole side thing that we're going to have to bolt on. Spooked, I kind of kept the same, where in this one it's on a 2, if you're in combat, you fall back. Why not? There are rules for fallback, and it's an action in the game. We'll hold on to that for right now. If nothing else, it does make it really interesting where, because you're activating the nearest enemy unit when it's their turn, them falling back could make it really interesting for who activates next and kind of put them in weird positions. Hold. So, in the core game, hold is just stand still and shoot. Not everything in Warcry has a ranged option. A lot of dudes, I would say the vast majority of them, are just melee, either 1 to 3 inch range weapons. And so the way I translated that was you make a single move going directly towards the nearest enemy model, meaning the models from your warband. That is, if the enemy fighter is in range of one of their attack profiles, they can make an action, a fight action. I meant to say that. They can make an attack action, that's what I said. And if the fighter begins its attack activation in range of an attack, they can instead make 2 attack actions. So hold, because they use hold so much, it's in every one of the profiles based on where you are. I wanted hold to be what is the most basic thing that you can do in Warcry. Move and punch somebody. And so that's what I wanted it to be. So if you start combat within an inch of someone, you just attack. If you are not, you can move, and hey, if you end up in range, then you can attack. With Dumbstruck, you can just pick a different guy to act with. Dumbstruck is meant to be them being dumb, right? Have them move in a random direction, but now you have to bring in something that can determine random direction. Like a scatter die or something, which is not crazy, but we're trying to make this as simple as possible for everyone who just owns the core book. Have them move in the right direction. It also adds some unpredictability, which I do like. I do like unpredictability. So we'll come back to Dumbstruck. Spooked, hold. Let me ask this. As far as my stuff on hold, does that make sense to everybody? That when you say what they call hold, I'm saying is basic thing that the game does, which is move, and hey, if they're in combat, you get to take a swing. If you're already in combat, you swing, because there's 2 actions for every activation in Warcry. So I think that's a pretty solid one. Someone tell me if it's crazy. Rampage, which is the one if you're in melee and you roll a 6, The fighter makes up to 3 attack actions as long as there's still an enemy within weapon range. So I think that's pretty self-explanatory. In the core, or the original, it's just you get a free attack and then you go into the combat phase where you get to attack again. This is just saying you use attack actions and hey, you get a bonus one. So I think that's pretty savage. Sufficiently savage, one would say. And when I envision this rule set, the game that I plan on filming this weekend is my Nurgle group versus a bunch of squigs, right? And to give you a sense of what I'm thinking of. So think of like one rabid squig just going nuts. Advance, which is used in the core set if you are more than 12 inches. So this just is literally like, just get to the opponent, right? And this is the super non-sexy one where it's just, you make 2 move actions. That's it, because you're so far away from the combat, you just got to get up there. Let's see. Zombie Man. Oh, what if Dumbfounded got rid of an attack die for that round or a negative hit modifier? I like that one. I like that one because, again, we're trying to make this as simple as possible without including a whole bunch of extra tools and that kind of stuff. So what if Dumbstruck said, apply, do the hold action, but you are, what's the stats on a game? So it's strength and number of attacks. Because it would be, yeah, you're still moving. What would it be? Dumbstruck, we'll replace that with, you do hold, except that you are -1 strength? Zombie Man, I like that idea. So like, let's pick an idea and workshop it a little bit. So let's pick Zombie Man's because I like his because it doesn't need a compass and it doesn't need a D8. It's just everything from the base game. Just building on what's already there. Would move mean towards an enemy model or an objective in this case? Well, so here's the thing. As I said before, not every mission has objectives. Some of them are just kill, kill, kill. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the most basic AI possible, and then we can always add things on top of it, right? That's like I did some time studying like robotics and that kind of stuff, where it's like you make one thing work and then you build on top of it. So right now we're trying to make rules for people to move and attack. That is all you need to do in Warcry, basically. Obviously, there's more to that. Remember, even if the AI is only moving and attacking, you, as the player, can still have objectives. And so, even if the enemy isn't moving towards an objective, if they're bogging you down, you're not getting there. So just kind of keep that in mind. But I'm certainly open to adding objective-based things in a little bit. I want to make sure that we have the base stuff down first. So I'm waiting for any responses. What do you think of Zombie Man's idea? Dumbstruck is just hold, which is the basic move and attack if you're in range, with some kind of negative modifier. I like that one. So Dumbstruck. And all these different actions, they're getting different names because Dumbstruck and Spooked and Hold don't necessarily fit. They fit more with the Traga thing. So seems good. Of course you say that. It's your idea. Negative mod. I'm just going to put it's some kind of negative modifier, and then I might play test a little bit what that looks like. Because that's the thing, is it needs to be simple. That's the whole point of Warcry. That's what we're going with. Makes sense. Thank you, Jordan. Okay. So I went through advance and then charge. So obviously Age of Sigmar has a charge phase. This is how you get people into combat. Warcry doesn't necessarily need that. I mean, you can literally just move and, hey, you're in range to hit somebody and you hit them. But I wanted to do something special for charge. So what I did is, if you roll charge, this fighter immediately makes a move action, adding 2 inches to their movement value, and must move directly towards the nearest unit from your warband. If this movement brings them within, I put 1 inch, but really I just mean any weapon range that they have. This model, this fighter immediately makes an attack action with +1 strength for its attacks this round. Omniphage, yes, you hit the nail on the head. They always have objectives, but there's no literal item or some specific point that you're moving towards. So yes, that's just wording. But yeah. Let's see. So that was my idea for charge, where since there's not a charge phase and there's not a charge action per se, this is saying, hey, the computer moves and aggressively tries to wreck your stuff. And that option is only available if they are outside of 3, but within 12. So they can reasonably make that distance. So I'm going to change it to where you don't have to end within an inch, but you have to end within a range of some kind of weapon that you have. The strength is your idea. Okay, let's see. 2 strength. Okay, I'm writing all this stuff down so I can do this later. Within... I'm going to clean up all the wording later, but this is more for me so that I can know what I'm trying to say, and then we'll figure it out later. Bone Splitters have a charge ability. Yeah, they can do the... because, well... It's called charge, but it's like a move and attack is what those actions actually are. So this is fundamentally the same thing. So again, I haven't gotten to the point where I'm letting the AI use abilities. So this is now everybody has access to that. If you roll a 4 up, if you're outside 3 inches. So that's kind of an interesting idea. That should make them very savage. Because yeah, Bone Splitters, I love the charge ability. It's so good. And that is what I've got so far. So what this gives us... Oh, and I want to talk about how they applied this. So the way I basically have... how many... Cole, so they love your lore videos. Thank you so much. This is not one of them. Can only activate if... Oh, yeah, if you're within so many inches and, yeah, close to when you started. For sure. So the way the activating an enemy works is basically you're going to pick a unit from... Hold on, let me stop that, reverse it, get my thoughts together. After you've completed your activation, right, you've taken a model and you've moved them. Now you're going to look and see what's the closest enemy model to my warband. Literally anyone in my warband, you're going to activate them. And then... because it's I go, you go, and turn-based, it's not like a full turn thing like AOS is. I go, you go makes it so that you're constantly pulling the frontmost people towards you, and then as you're moving your back guys, theoretically they're moving their furthest back guys who would be out of range and that kind of stuff. So, yeah. Any parity breaking abilities in Warcry are super good. Parity. Not sure what you mean by parity. But yeah. Anything that gives you more activations or more actions, action economy stuff, real good. So that is my thought, where you're always activating the nearest dude and then rolling on the chart to see what they do. The reason I really wanted to focus on movement is because I want the game state to change a lot. Omniphage says that's going to involve a lot of measuring, though, right? It will. I think, honestly... Let me see. Because I'm looking at some of the deployment cards. Of course, I don't have them in front of me, because that would be way too convenient and make me look like a real professional. Hold on a second. They're in here somewhere. Okay, yeah. So I have the deployment cards here. Tell you what, let's go to the downward cam and we'll walk through these together. So here's what I'm thinking, right? If you go with some of these deployment setups, move them out of the way. Get this thing as a little pointer. You should, with relative ease, because they have you split your warband up into all these different places. Remember, we are using the core rules as kind of the basis. There should be something that is closer, right, than others. That should be fairly obvious. So, let me see if I can hold it up here and still get a good image. So we'll go with this one. Battle plan, no quarter. Probably not a good example because it's such a competitive one, or it's meant to be competitive. But if I start, round 1, I start here, right? Round 1, my opponent starts here, right? So from there, it's just kind of basically one measurement. I move a dude, who's closer to him, move him up. And then round 2 and 3, it does get a little more complicated. There will be some measuring, but I don't know. The goal, honestly, is that if everyone is constantly moving, hopefully it will make it somewhat easy to tell who is closer. You could also shuffle fighter cards and deal them out, couldn't you? Yes, you could. You could assign random numbers to everybody and then roll for them. There's a lot of ways you could do it. The thing about fighter cards is, like, if you have, like, I have like 5 planes runners or something like that, like, you know, you would need a card for each one of them. That's not the end of the world, but yeah. Can only activate, let's see. I'm just reading through here. Thank you, everybody. So we can try that. So we can try randomizing who goes. Shy of like a full, because warbands can be from like 3 to 20 models. It's ridiculous. I think 5 is probably the minimum. But you can be like 5 for brutes, I would think. Minimum to a high end of like a ton of squigs and grots and that kind of stuff. So that one, I don't mind saying, if you have a way to randomize it, I encourage you to use it. But this is a way that no matter what number of dudes you have in your warband, they will all activate, right? Because even if you finish all of your activations, then you just let the opponent, who's closer, move, who's closer, move, that kind of thing. So I do like the randomization more, Omniphage. You are completely right. I'm going to add that as an option. But I will say, this is awesome, but I'm falling asleep. Okay, sorry. You go to bed, Omniphage. We'll talk about it later. I'm going to do a video kind of doing a tutorial of these rules once we're all done. So that'll kind of throw it all together. But you've been super helpful. Thank you so much. What I'm going to do now... I hate when that happens. You fall asleep with the iPad hit your face. So let me ask, I'm going to pause here. Does anyone have any glaring critiques, meaning there's some obvious interaction that I am missing? The way that the game round would work is that you as a player would roll to see what ability dice you get. And you would, do your normal thing with the wild die, and you'd put that off to the side. And then you'd roll another die on a 1 through 3. The AI has priority. On a 4-up, you have priority, because that's all that really matters, is who goes first. And then you simply activate models based on this. Let's assume for this example, the opponent, the AI, has priority. They would say, who's the closest model to any one of my opponents? You figure out how far away they are, meaning you measure with this chart. And then you roll the result and complete that action. Then it goes over to you. You do your normal stuff, like you're playing a normal game of Warcry, and then back to the opponent, who's closest, that kind of stuff. So Andrew, give me your thoughts on if that basic mechanic has any glaring flaws when it comes to, ending the round or, Battleshock equivalent or whatever. Tell me if there's anything I'm totally missing. Andrew says, like I said, simple AI, play model nearest to objective towards the objective, then nearest model to try and kill. But Andrew, here's my thing though, right? You're correct. That is simple. I am not opposed to making a list of the missions that have specific objective points, like places or artifacts that you're trying to get, and including those rules, because that's a great idea. Right? Having the computer play a little bit smarter when it comes to objectives is great. The only thing, though, is that it has to be an optional thing, because some of the missions for the game don't involve specific places. Some of them are like, kill the leader, or kill, the shield section of the opponent's warband, that kind of stuff. So, I definitely... let's see. So anyway, that's the kind of thought. You are correct that moving towards an objective when they are there is the smarter play. 100%. So I'm going to write that down. towards objective and missions that have them. That have them, and I saw some responses in the chat. I'll get to those right now. No worries, good brewing, thank you. Lord Novus, the only thing I'm worried about is the player kiting the AI between objectives and their units. There is no system that I am going to create right now in my pajamas that eliminates the ability for people to game the system. This is intended to be something to be kind of fun, to be able to play games by yourself. If you want to game the system, you're more than welcome to. I mean, my thought is this is a lot of crunch to be able to play a narrative thing. Play a narrative campaign with some cool narrative missions. You do the campaign missions, which are super flavorful. So that's my thought. You're right, because I'm not going to sit here and make a system that cannot be gained. You are correct. If somebody wanted to, they could just keep activating their furthest back models from your warband, which would then trigger the opponent to move towards you, and that way when you do activate your front guys, you can maybe move in an attack. Yes, I'm fully aware that is a gameable thing. I just, what does help is Omniphage's suggestion to randomize, for sure. So yeah. But yes, Lord Novus, you are absolutely correct. That's a very astute observation, so thank you. Jake says some kind of screen/intercept option for one of the action roles would be good. So, screen and interception is an interesting concept. And here's when I hear that, here's what goes on in my brain, is that all of the abilities that we talked about, right? Whether it's Dumbstruck is just move and attack at a reduced strength, or hold is move and attack, advance is just move. All of those things are predicated on getting to the enemy and bogging them down. So I feel like I'm not opposed to the idea of having a screen, like, increasing the number of options here, but I want screen to do something more specific than move and engage an enemy, because all the things that we already designed do that, with the exception of spooked, which makes you run away. So, yeah. It's a good idea, though, because that's where you get into, like, strategy, but having an AI with a specific strategy gets kind of crazy. Let's see. Omniphage, if you want, you can keep spending Wild Eye to go first. You can spend 1 to go first on a 3-up, not 4-up. Spend 1 to go first on a 3-up. Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you want to see... Spend Wild Eye to gain initiative. Maybe sort missions into categories. Yes, actually, if you didn't know it, there are already, I believe, on some of the missions, there's like a little cards in the top. But yes, absolutely. Is it Nacho Knight's Cheese? That's exactly what I was planning to do. So I'm going to write that down. Sort missions. Because here's the thing. If you're playing by yourself, right, the 3 mission categories I was thinking of, because you want something that gives you a challenge, but it doesn't lean heavily on the AI, is kill missions, meaning you have to wipe the board. You have to kill everything that there is. Right, and that makes perfect sense. Very straightforward, probably a great demo one. Another one would be like a smash and grab thing, like, hey, here's these artifacts sprinkled about. You need to go get them all. Your opponent is just going to try and interfere and tie you down, and maybe those missions would have some kind of like generating new enemies to make it an ongoing challenge. So like that would be like a, get the MacGuffin. Get the MacGuffin mission was what I'm calling that. Like a plot device. And then the third mission I was going to have was just survive. You have to... There's a few of those missions in the core game where it's just waves of enemies are going to come and kick you in the nuts, and you have to survive until turn 5. And a lot of those missions have, like, you can't be within the edges of the board, meaning you can't just hide. You have to be in the center, in the killing ground, and survive. So I thought that was a cool option. So for all of these, to make the AI optimal, I am going to go through the core mission cards and break those down into different categories. Do those sound like reasonable things, right? Generally speaking, 3 categories: kill a bunch of stuff, grab the objectives because your opponent's flooding all over you, so you're trying to back them away and kill them off so you can get the objective, and then also survive. Very straightforward. Let's see. Mercurial C, if you have to kill a particular model, it's the objective. If you have to kill all the shield, for example, all the models in it count as the objective when you go for the nearest one. That's an interesting one. The Zombie Man, the mission card should be Robert Downey Jr. from Tropic Thunder. I say that all the time. Survive! And nobody ever understands what I'm talking about because it's such a ridiculous scene from like a little niche movie. I love it. Survive! You got me. That was a good one. Mercurial Sea. That is an interesting idea. Because I'm trying to think of missions that don't designate a specific unit, model, collection of models, anything like that. And I can't think of one. So that would absolutely work. I wouldn't mind changing Dumbstruck like we had it before, right? It's basically hold, meaning you move, and hey, if you you make a move action, and if you end that move action with, in such distance of an enemy, you attack them. But changing it to where you're not going directly towards the nearest enemy, but towards the objective. Does that sound like an interesting change for everybody else? So Dumbstruck is, there's no negative modifier. It's programming the AI to go towards whatever we're deeming as the objective. So there we go. I'm going to wait for a response on that one. Our music stopped. Oh no, it didn't. It just went real low on my end. I really would not enjoy a mission where the AI scoops up the treasure and runs away from me. Yeah, I don't want them to scoop it up and run, because that's not fun, right? And this is supposed to be a bunch of Chaos Champions who are fighting to prove that they belong to Archeon or should be a part of his army. So I wouldn't do anything so big as like having it pick up the treasure, so to speak, but just hover over it so the opponent can't, I think that's a pretty interesting idea. So yeah, if it's an artifact on the floor, right, they would just move towards it and just stay on it. If the objective is killing a specific, part of your faction, like the shield or the hammer or whatever, they would just move towards any of those models. And if they end attack. So, okay. Let's do that. So, hold, but to objective. Yeah, it's good. And sometimes it's going to be good the AI went for the objective. For sure. So we'll do that. Let's see. Jake says maybe the MacGuffin missions, the fail condition could be a time limit. That's a great idea. In it. Plus time limit. I'm going to write this down. Yeah, the time limit would absolutely be important. I'm going to look at some of the other, like the existing missions and see, because I think they usually end on 4 or 5, something like that. Just to give you enough time to like physically move around the board. But, yeah. Lord Nova says, yeah, it's good. Sometimes it's going to be the AI went for the objective. I agree with you. It was just a matter of figuring out how we're going to word that. What I think I'm getting from all of this, and this is great feedback, y'all, is that I need this rule set, I think really could work. I think it could be very interesting. I think the real crux is going to be curating the missions and twist cards. So that you're playing with a deck, a possibility of missions and that kind of stuff that are conducive to fun play, right? Because if you get like, your twist card is, I don't know, both y'all get well, that wouldn't even be that bad. If a twist card stacks with the events, or if the mission card is a little bit wonky on like what the actual objective is and it doesn't work with what we just described, we'll leave that one out. So I think at the end of this, I'm going to make a list of missions and break them down into those categories we talked about earlier, right? Kill stuff, get the MacGuffin, or survive. I think that's pretty fair. Mercurials, he says a few end on 3, which I'm not a fan of. Yeah, 3 is not even worth setting up the darn board for. Because it takes longer than 3 turns to like build the Warcry board. So we'll try that out. Beyond that, so we're using the existing cards, a curated list of them, but the existing cards to come up with a mission, a deployment, and the core rules for building a warband. The AI warband might be a little bit different just because, like I said, I don't yet have an interesting way of making actions work. So the fact that they cannot use actions can be supplicated with the fact that they can have more points, right? Maybe it's, my 1K versus 1,200 points of squigs, and they can't use abilities, but I can. That's kind of my balancing factor. That's kind of what I'm looking at. I don't know about y'all. I think that sounds pretty cool. So let's see. I'm just scrolling up to make sure I didn't miss any comments. Y'all have been awesome with helping with this. So let me ask the chat this question. Do you mind the events table? Again, if you're just tuning in, the events table is something that was kind of made to have like consequences from one game to the next in the AOS version, where they don't have stuff like an injury chart or something like that. I like the events table if you are using the standard game rules, like the actual core book rules, because in this, there's not much consequence going from game to game, as opposed to the Tome of Champions, which has its own injury roll table, which has a lot more consequence to it. And so here's really what I'm getting at. I don't know if I like the Tome of Champions injury table along the events, because those two together can be very punishing. But I think that if you just do the core rules, that's very bland, and the events table would be helpful. So do you think I should write in some kind of thing that's like, hey, if you're not using Tome of Champions, use the events table? What do we think? So I'll give you a second to answer that. Spezia says, I like it with a few tweaks. For sure. We can, in Champs, it seems... In Champs... Oh, in Tome of Champions, it seems mitigated from injury table. Yeah. So, if you have just the core book, this is nice because it does give you some consequence game to game. But if you do have the Tome of Champions, I do prefer that quite a bit. I like the events table. It's solid. Okay. Hey, we'll keep it. I'm going to play a game with it, and if it seems like it's too punishing to have both, which I don't know. I mean, honestly, like, very rarely do most of my guys die. I'll lose, like, the chumps because I use them as meat shields. But I don't know. No reason you shouldn't if someone decides they want to use it. That's true. That's true. Just throw it in there, and it's like, hey, if you want to use this, you can. Cool. I dig it. Trying to think of anything else. Some of this stuff, it's a little bit abstract. By that I mean, I think the events table would be good for highly recommended add-on rather than assuming it's a core part. Fair enough. Fair enough. The only other thing I want to shore up in terms of articulating rules wise is, let's say this. Let me give you an example, okay? Actually, we're going to go to the downward cam. I'm going to draw this out. It's probably a lot easier. Oop, there we go. So, let's say I have a dude here, right? I'm going to put an M for my guy. I'm going to put here, this is the enemy, E for enemy. And there is a wall right there. Okay? Now, rules is written that we have here. He has to move directly towards this dude. right? But let's say there's a guy here, my guy. Here's the question. Should we write the rules so that he has to try to get to the literal closest, or, because that way it would bring him around here, or should he go to the guy he can actually see, right? Even though he's further away. So we could put in some clause that's like, if he cannot see the model, you can't move towards him. You're going to move towards the closest model that the enemy can see. Let's think about that for a hot second. If anyone needs clarification on this, just let me know. But what I'm basically saying is, at this point, he's closer, but I can see him. So, I'll let us debate that. Tell me what you think in the comments. Or the chat, I mean. I'll give you a second for that. So, basically I'm asking is, should we put the clause in? Because, people are common sense. They're going to say, like, oh, okay, well, I obviously cannot go through the wall, but you can climb over it. So you could, in theory, go for here. Or should we make a clause where it's just, closest or closest visible? Closest model in line of sight seems clear. Closest or closest visible. Right. Literal if he can make it. See, Andrew, it's basically the same things about, closest model line of sight. Closest visible makes more sense to me. Okay. We're going to go with that. Because I agree. Okay. Move towards closest visible. Now, aren't there a lot of see-through walls? Yeah, but you can use whatever you want. But what if they can fly? What if they can fly? Because we can always just put the clause in that says if a model has fly, they ignore this. Closest model line of sight, because in your example, it would take the AI 2 turns to reach the player, right? Because it would have to go all the way around, right? Okay. Closest visible enemy model. Even if they have fly, I'm not really super worried about it, right? Because if the enemy has fly, doesn't necessarily mean that they're up high enough at that exact moment to be able to see the enemy. Closest visible still applies. Yeah. Visible enemy model. I'm okay with that. I like that one. With the exception of Night Haunt, how many other factions have full flight armies, right? Magagan now have some with the big fat flies. There's a few. Some of the Zine stuff. The closet works fine. Okay. Yeah. Fly models. Exemption. Okay. So we're doing good there. Let's see. Because your AI turns to reach the player. Yep. Okay. So I'm trying to think of any other corner case weird things that would come up. I tried to get the wording right where... here it is. So, for this, many of the actions require you to determine the closest model or closest unit. If there are 2 or more eligible models or units, you can pick which one will be treated. So basically, if you're tied, just pick one. You can roll off if you're really worried about randomness. But yeah. What I would say for the attack profiles, in the event that a fighter has 2 weapon profiles, you must choose one to attack with. Okay, just like normal Warcry, you only get to attack with one. Always choose a weapon that is in range of an enemy. If there are 2 or more such weapons, choose the profile with a higher strength value. So when I say that, what I'm thinking of is archers, specifically. Archers, if you don't know, they have a ranged weapon as well as a melee weapon. So what it's saying is, let's go with our basic move of hold, right? Which is move and attack. Okay, that's as basic as it gets. If you have an archer, they would move and then attack. And they have to attack with a weapon profile that is in range. So if it's far away, that would be the bow, not the sword, of course. However, if they're in melee and they would otherwise have a chance to shoot something, they have to go with whatever has the higher strength, which is generally the melee weapon. So that's my thought. I think that cleared things up. Tell me if there's some corner case scenario that I'm not thinking of. Would he try and stick by the wall for cover? You mean would the AI stick by the wall? I don't have any way of articulating that rules-wise. That's a good, interesting point, though. I wouldn't be opposed to saying if he didn't have enough movement to completely cross an obstacle, he stands at the base of it, because that way if you walked up to a fence and you couldn't get over it, you would just be behind the fence, which would give you cover. I think that it's kind of the same thing, right? But there's no way to be like, if you went 2 inches to the right, you can kind of clip that wall. It's a very specific thing to try and write down. We're basically trying to avoid making this Necromunda. Because I love Necromunda so much, but there are so many stinking rules. But it's a great point. So we can definitely try to make our... Let's see, move to objectives. Can't cross an obstacle. You stop at its base. Okay. Let's see. So, I just want a little bit of confirmation. This is the way that I worded that work for everybody as far as what weapons you're choosing. It should be a no-brainer. Like, I feel like I shouldn't have to write that out, but people are going to ask. So, if you have an archer guy, he's going to move and shoot because he has a ranged weapon. If he's in melee, go with whatever is the strongest and in range. Yeah. And I put a little cheat sheet here, activate the enemy fighter that's closest to any member of your warband, roll to determine their actions, resolve any attacks. So that is kind of my thoughts. I'm trying to think. I think the bulk of the work now is, one, cleaning up all this wording, because it's a hot mess. And it's my fault, because that's just who I am. But after cleaning it up, I think that sifting out specific missions and maybe deployments, are going to be a key part of this. Using a modified deck so that you can build stuff out as you need. Having a good mix of, objectives where you're killing stuff. Because honestly, I think that's going to be the best first mission to try this all on, is just you running forward and killing a bunch of stuff. To get used to using your opponent and measurements and that kind of thing. Putting in the clause where you can randomize your opponent is cool. It just doesn't work for every warband, but it's good to have. I like that idea quite a bit. It will certainly complicate things, like in a good way, like make the board more spread out and complex and that kind of stuff. So that's good. What else am I missing? I got the injury rules. The thing is, a lot of this is just straight lifted from the core rules, and so that's what's missing. So I will go back through and put references to the core rules, like use mission selection from the core rules with this modification. Choose from this list, and you have a list of the missions. I'm going to open this up to the last bit of questions before I go ahead and hop off and just get to work on all this. Does anyone have any last suggestions for me, or things that you'd like to see worked in? So we got looking for cover. We have missions. We have events. These events between games. One other thing I'll ask is, we had some good discussion when Omniphage was on, talking about the first one, which is Deadly Rock Slide. The idea that I had put out there was that this is supposed to be a bad thing, right? Deadly Rock Slide's a bad event. Pick one uninjured unit from your army. For your warband, that unit immediately rolls on the injury table as if they were taken out of battle the last round. last battle round. So that would basically give you one more injured dude. Whereas Omniphage's suggestion was pick D3 units, D3 warriors or fighters in your warband. And they start with some number of wounds going into the next round. So they would start the game injured. And that's an interesting one. The thing is, it has to be a low amount of wounds to be taken, because it could apply to, some of the chumpiest chumps there are, like 8 wound nobodies. So that's interesting. And then also, how do you calculate which one gets injured and that kind of stuff. So let me think about that. I feel like the first one, the one that I came up with, is cleaner for sure, but I do the one that Omniphage came up with is much more in the spirit of what the original text that we're translating this from is. So tell me your thoughts. Omniphage says, just wanted to say thank you. You're always a great creator. Thank you so much. That's very kind of you. I'm trying. Lord Novus, what if the player's activation is randomized? And sorry in advance if that was mentioned. So if the AI, you mean the AI was randomized? We talked about that, yeah. The only reason I want to keep the idea of having the closest enemy fighter activate instead of randomizing it is because warbands can change in size from like 5 dudes to like up to 20. And so having, because it's so random what number could be, saying like a D8 or a D10 doesn't necessarily help. And so what I'm going to do is have this be the baseline, and then I'm going to put in a clause that says, if you would like to randomize, here's a few ways you could do it, which includes those dice. So yes, that is a great idea. A few people chimed that in. I do like it because it does certainly make the game more complex in a good way, because now you have people activating all different kinds of places of the board. But as a baseline with people who may have, as a overarching rule that anyone can use, I meant the player's units. I don't know. I mean, it's still my warband. I want to be in control of it. It would certainly be a challenge. I'll give you that. Mercurial C, if a model has a weapon with a minimum range, like most of the really long range weapons, I'd like to see them stand and shoot rather than always having to rush forward towards melee. That's a good point. How would we word that? Because we want to be something simple and succinct in one of these rules, right? We could say, if a model has a weapons profile with a minimum range, they can move to get in weapon range, but if they are already in weapon range, they stand still. Does that make sense, Mercurial C? So if they have a weapon with a minimum range, right, which would be your longbows and that kind of stuff. Weapon. And that way they can move to get into range, because there has to be an option for them to at least try to get into range. Otherwise, they stand and shoot. Or they attack, right? Self-preservation rule. If a ranged attack is possible, it should make that attack. Okay, the fighter has 2 weapon profiles. Okay, we can do that. I'm just writing this down. Range. Yeah, because you raise a good point, Curiosity, because at that point, the units that have like a real ranged attack, like that has a minimum range, because like all the bows and that kind of stuff, they have a minimum range, so you can get too close to them and punch them in the face, where they can't shoot you. They're all designed to be shooters first and nothing else. like secondly. So that makes perfect sense, right? That way shooters shoot, melee guys go into melee. Perfect. I like that. I'll figure out how to make that happen. Sweet. Let me see. So let's do this. This is a fun one. Help me rename some of these actions. So on this action chart, we have, I'm going to stick with the distance measurements that they have here, just as a dry run. I mean, they're playing this game on a Warcry board anyway, so I don't see any reason to not at least try them. You know, you're in combat if you're within 1 inch of a model, close if you're between 3 and 12, and far if you're more than 12. I don't have a problem with that right now. I'll play test it, and if I need to change it, I can. But let's rename what these actions are called. So, Dumbstruck. Dumbstruck, we decided, was making a move towards an objective, whatever that might mean, the objective, and then if you end that movement within range of an enemy, you attack them. So what can we call that, right? We don't want to call it Dumbstruck, because that's not being dumb, that's being clever, right? Moving towards the objective. So let's do, I'm going to write these out with a little bit of a translation here. Dumbstruck. We have Spooked. I kind of like Spooked for fallback. Hold, charge, rampage, and advance. Okay, let's do these. So unfortunate. Well, no, because it's not unfortunate, right? We're playing smart, right? If you roll a 1, you move towards the objective, which is smart for the AI. Clever struck. Let's do, what about cunning, right? Because if you're cunning, you're thinking smart. You're like, they're all going that way. What if we went this way and guarded the objective? So we'll call it cunning. Any objections or puns or anything better? Eye on the prize. That's a great one, Aaron. I'm going to wait here. This is the only problem with back and forth talk, is that there's like a delay. I'm going to keep Spooked because I like it. Just, I just imagine like you're fighting, then go, I don't want to be here. Let's see. Hold should be steady. Yeah, so hold is the basic move towards the nearest enemy model. And attack. So what should that be? Like, what about like press forward for hold? Right, because press forward, you just move and attack. That's all it is. I'll put that as an idea here while we're waiting for other ideas. So what is your thoughts for hold? Again, move, and at the end of that movement, if there's someone in range, you attack. It gets everybody kind of like moving around the board, and sure, it would probably, if there was a human playing, you would move, and if somebody was not in range, you would move again. But this at least splits up where people are going and kind of creates a different board state, which I think would be really good for those objective-based games. Press the attack. Press the attack and advance. I do kind of like advance for the basic one. Hold is do nothing-ish. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't... Even in the one they made, I'm like, why is it called hold? They're at least they're shooting. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It could be something else. Charge is the one that I came up with, where if you are between 3 and 12 inches, you immediately make a move action, adding 2 inches to your movement. And if you end that within melee range of an enemy, you get +1 strength when you attack later. You get you move and attack, but there's a bonus to move and a bonus to your attack. Charge is a great name for it. It just is what it is. You're charging into combat, and that momentum of the movement gives you your +1 strength. I'm pretty happy with that one. Maybe call it brutal charge or something like that if you want to be super fancy. Then we have Rampage, which is if you're already in melee, you just get to do a free attack action on top of the 2 attack actions that you're already going to be doing. Okay, yeah, Mercurial Sea. If this is the action where archers could stand and shoot, advance is a little off. You're right. I'm going to say I like press the attack. Press the attack because it sums up everything, right? Whether you're, stand there and shoot more arrows, or pressing the attack, literally just walking up and punching somebody. So we'll go with that. Hold is now press the attack. I'm going to say charge is brutal charge. Rampage. I mean, that's another one where I'm like, this is pretty good. Rampage is a cool name. Plus, it reminds me of that sweet 2D game when you used to be a gorilla and a giant wolf smashing all up a city. And the last one here is advance. So the way that the core book had advance be was that you basically run, right? You're outside 12 inches. You're not going to be doing anything. You need to run. And so the way I was going to have that go for advance, I don't want to make the caveat if you have a ranged weapon. Like, I don't know. Do shooters get to rampage? Yes, they would. Because this means if you are in combat within 1 inch of an enemy. So if you're a guy who's shooting, even if you, in your turn, don't actually move, you just stand there and shoot. If one of my characters comes up and starts punching your archer in the face, the next round, he is within 1 inch of an enemy, he can punch him. So that would absolutely work. Rampage could be the Rampage Universal Ability. Rampage Universal Ability. Oh, the one that everyone can use. Yes. Yeah, but we're not describing actions, we're describing... I guess that would work, wouldn't it? Rampage. Let me see. Let me get my core rules here. Where is it? I know that there is a list. Here we go. Universal abilities. Rampage. This fighter makes a bonus move action. Then they can make a bonus attack action. So this one has them starting in combat already. Like the way Rampage, the way it's worded here is that you're already within an inch of combat, so you wouldn't need to move. So the way that I did Rampage was you have your normal 2 actions, fight, and then if you will a Rampage one, you get a third one. So that was my thought, was Rampage is just like super punchy. Make an additional one. So that was my thought. Does anyone have any suggestions on a different name for Rampage? It's actually good that we change it because I don't want it to be confused with the Rampage action that I, because I'm not an AI, can use. What's a word for, like, I don't know, flailing fists, or like you can call it like unbridled fury, or I was gonna call it fury swipes, but that's a Pokemon move. Okay, on shooters, the model should only move as it is needed to meet the range requirement of the model main weapon. Yeah, I have some other wording. Let me see what I wrote down here. The way that I had it put was if this model has a weapon with a minimum range value, meaning those are all of the long range weapons have a minimum range as well. They only need to move the minimum distance to get into range of their weapon, and if they're already in range, they simply attack. That was kind of the way that I worded that. Berserk, carnage, in the thick of it. I kind of like Carnage. I'm not gonna lie, he's my favorite Spider-Man villain. In the thick of it, yeah. And the last one is advance. So in the like I said, in the core one, advance just means you basically run. We can call it run, that would be super easy. Slap happy. I like that. Patty cake. Good right. Oh no, no problem, dude. Spezia, you're awesome. So for advance, I was just gonna have it be like run. You know, if you're outside 12, you roll to run. You gotta move. So the thing about the advance one, where you just move, I don't want to put the caveat on that about the ranged weapons because if somebody was outside 12 inches, here's my logic, okay? If someone was outside 12 inches, and that round they did the move, they would almost be guaranteed to be in range the next round, and they could do a shoot. So I think not letting them shoot with one of their actions sets them up to shoot more later. And so that's kind of my logic here. Rush. Ooh, I like that one. Rush. That's cool. Which will also be the band that I'm listening to as I film this battle report. Curiosity, you nailed it. So that's my logic behind not having the caveat about ranged weapons there, is because then next round they'll be closer to be able to take more advantage of their weapons going down. So that's kind of cool. So let's see. We got that. So now I can rewrite these with all the name changes and the caveats, make a new chart for us. I don't know why there's a 79 right there. During the action phase, yeah. I think we're good. Now, of course, I did this at my on my lunch break at work, so I didn't have the rule book. I'm gonna basically lift a bunch of the wording in terms of, like, you know, phases, actions, activations, that kind of stuff. Today's war cry, mean soul. Also, it's best if shooters move towards objectives for cunning rather than standing and shooting, probably. Yeah, so if they're... Yeah, I mean, that's true. That's applicable across all of them, right? So if they roll cunning, right, which is our old dumbstruck one, they would still move towards objectives, but they can shoot the nearest enemy unit. Yeah, that works. Shooters can... how should we... Should they always shoot the nearest enemy model? That's definitely the clearest. Right, so... There... Here, we'll do another chart. So let's say we do this. We have... Objective. We have, we'll say, S for shooter, and enemy. Okay, let's say I've surrounded this dude. He's about to have a rough day. So let's say he rolls cunning, which is what we're calling it, right? He would move towards the nearest objective, and now he's here. And then he would shoot the closest enemy model. Now, because he made the move first, this is now the closest enemy model instead of this guy. And that's because that works out, because in this example, he's moving towards the objective and he's also shooting at whoever on my team is also closest to the objective, right? He's moving there to defend it. I think that makes perfect sense. What do you all think? Oh, I don't know why my camera's so out of focus. It's having trouble with the lighting there. Let's see. Honestly, it sounds like you are trying to make an AOS Blackstone Fortress using Warcry. Well, I mean, I am, Aaron. That's exactly what's going on. And the reason I say that is because they came out with Age of Sigmar, and then they came out with Blackstone Fortress, and today Sam Pearson found a way to kind of bash those two rules together to make the AI that we're using right now. And so what I am doing is just modifying that to work for Warcry. So it's taking all the things that Games Workshop's already done, which is what they did this morning, and I'm just saying, hey, we could also do that to this other game that you made. So you're right. You are technically correct. The best kind of correct. What is the best warband introduced by Warcry. Aesthetically, oh, my favorite's the Corvus Cabal. They just look sick. I love them. I have the most Untamed Beast. I always want to say Beast of Chaos, but that's not what they are. They're Untamed Beasts. But Corvus Cabal is my favorite aesthetically. Something makes good sense to me. I like it. Cool. Well, isn't AOS Blackstone Fortress just Warhammer Quest? I don't know Warhammer Quest, to be honest with you. There are rules for how the AI works and that kind of thing, so yeah. Anyway, but hey, kudos for the attempt. Thank you so much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on this the rest of the night. I'm going to clean it up, get it looking good, lift all of the verbiage and the wording from the Warcry core book so that it's not confusing at all. There's no discrepancy between like, oh, well, Doug said activation, but this thing says action, that kind of stuff. Really clean it up. And I think we should be all set. So what I plan to do is, like I said, I'm going to clean it up, and then I'm going to make a video that'll go up next week sometime before the battle report, or maybe with the battle report, but basically explaining how all of this works in a more succinct way where I'm not crowdsourcing. I'm like, hey, here's the official Google Doc. I have a link that anyone can use it, and then walk through how it works with an actual demo game. Like I'm going to set up a game and walk through it with people so they can get a sense of how things work. And then I'm hoping to have the battle report up by Friday. It takes a lot of time to edit a battle report, and so I'll be doing that throughout the week. So I'll work and get the rest of the week's content ready, scheduled, and then throughout the week I will be working on the battle report. That's the goal. So anyway, thank you all so much for joining me. I'm going to go ahead and shut it down just because I'm getting warm in this room, and I have a lot of work to do. So thank you guys. It was super fun. I appreciate it. And I'll talk to you all very, very soon.